My name is Eileen. I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Um, I love the topic of today's, or this particular gathering. It's called Gadgets and Sanctuaries. Um, we have two presenters joining us today. Um, the way we'll set it up, I should have asked you this when we were just setting up, sorry. Um, are you both okay if I have you speak for 20 to 25 minutes and then we can each, and then we can go into a whole group conversation. You can speak back, respond to each other. Is that okay? Then that's what we're going to do, folks. Um, So I will go in the same order as was on the schedule, unless either of you objects to that. So for now, I will introduce Dr. Eser Kim. And I just lost her bio. Dr. Kim is an adjunct professor at PUTS, Presbyterian something Theology School, and Seoul Jankson University. She is, what is the PUTS? I don't have it, sir.
It's Presbyterian University and Theological Seminary. So it just puts.
And Seoul Jankson University. She is a practical theologian and educator who focuses on youth agency, hybrid identity, counter-narrative pedagogy, and decolonial theory. She also serves as an international relations director at a South Korean church, collaborating with global partners to deepen intercultural ecumenical dialogue that goes beyond short-term mission work. Beyond all of that, Eser is the networking coordinator for the Religious Education Association. So we are very grateful that she does this for us. And with that, I invite you to take it away, Eser.
Thank you, Eileen, for that wonderful introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay. Thank you. Hi, all. My name is Eser. It's really good to be here today. So my presentation, I read Leonard's presentation, like the paper too, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation after this. It's gonna be super fun. But I'll just start with my presentation first now at the time. So my presentation, I tried to frame it with two questions. So one is, how do online faith communities serve as transformative sanctuaries for marginalized emerging adults? And then what educational, psychological implications arise from this shift? And then in less than a generation, digital platforms have moved from the periphery of religious life to its center. And you can see it from a lot of data's. For instance, there's a South Korean Pastoral Data Research Institute. They did research and they found out that in 2012, only 1% used media as nurturing their spiritual growth. And then in 2023, that jumped to 19%. And I'm sure after COVID, with COVID and everything in 2025, I'm sure the numbers jumped higher. So a nearly 20-fold increase that now rivals sermons. And family influence is a primary formative source for a lot of congregants here in South Korea. And I think this migration from pew to platform is not merely just a technological issue, but I think it's a reconfiguration of authority and belonging in theological agency. And Barna Research State also gave a research saying that those who most often substitute digital content for in-person worship are usually millennials or urbanites or ethnical minorities, and others located outside the majority experience of institutional Christianity. So I found this research really interesting. And digital faith spaces, I think, thus function simultaneously as sanctuaries of voice, where emerging adults experiment with leadership and activism and communal care, and as arenas where personhood is flattened into metrics and profiles that Charles Taylor calls leveling of moral space. So this article follows that tension through 4 movements. I start with From Silence to Voice, tracing how marginalized youth, young adults first encounter theological agency online, and then I move on to digital testimonies, give case studies, and then I talk about depth and danger that engages Charles Taylor's critique. And then I try to wrap it up all talking about holding the tension and digital belonging that equips churches and educators to cultivate depth without surrendering accessibility. So by weaving empirical evidence with philosophical insight, theological insight, the study, I argue that when critically embraced, digital sanctuaries can expand the conceptual boundaries of church and agency and formation for a lot of rising generations. I use integrative literature. These are the main books that I looked into. I also try to figure that I also use digital ethnographies, and then I use case studies. So from silence to voice, I asked why marginalized emerging adults turn to digital spaces. And this is also what I saw a lot when especially I was doing youth ministry in Canada, when Asian hate movement, like when the Atlanta 2024 shooting happened, a lot of my youth, they turned to social media, they turned to Instagram and spoke really loud and out loud of what was happening in the world. But then in churches, they were super silent. So I thought it was very interesting contrast. They didn't talk about anything regarding that within the church, but their social media was blowing up with anti-Asian hate, and then all these movements. So I wondered, why is this happening? Why is marginalized adults turning to digital spaces? And a couple of reasons that I thought of was, for many emerging adults, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, traditional church spaces have too often functioned as places of theological silence than spiritual agency. And with its fixed hierarchies and dominant cultural norms, institutional religion has frequently failed to hear or honor their lived experiences. And in such context, the pulpit remains distant, gate kept by authority structures that are slow to shift. And as Angela Gorel argues in her book, Always On, many of these individuals find digital platforms to be more hospitable and honest spiritual expressions than institutional church settings, particularly when their voices have been long ignored or suppressed. So where the pulpit was inaccessible, the comment section became a public theological stage. So this turn to digital expression is not merely a matter of convenience or technological affinity. I think it signals a more profound restructuring of religious authority and democratizing spiritual voices. And what was once confined to the clergy or institutional power, I think it's now open to direct theological participation. So digital testimonies, digital spaces have opened new possibilities for emerging adults to claim theological agency and respond to social issues. One example that's not done by churches or any faith community, but it's done by Korean government. It's a government-led digital platform. It's called Korea's Youth Participation Patrol. So I'm sure that you all know how to read Korean. I'm just kidding here, but so this is a specific platform for youth. So they this is where they can engage in civic discourse, and it's it was launched to foster youth agency in public life, and this platform leverages digital communication as the most accessible participation means. And one notable youth-led communication, one youth-led initiative advocated for delaying school start time. So usually kids had to, youth had to go to school by like 8 a.m. But then through this campaign, a lot of youth, they talked about it. They talked about how sleep rights are important. And this proposal was actually taken up by the regional education offices, and a pilot program started, and it became like a huge news over South Korea. And actually a lot of schools nowadays, they pushed when students have to come to school. So I think now they have to come to school around like 9 a.m. or something. But anyway, like this example, I think it illustrates how digital platforms can serve as vital tools for elevating young people voices in shaping public life and social policy, extended well beyond just entertainment or like private expression into spheres of tangible civic impact. On platforms like YouTube, high school students now lead Bible studies, Instagram feeds that once it still does center aesthetic self-presentations, but there are also a lot of cases that serve as prophetic spaces where young Christians respond to like climate injustice, racism, or gender discrimination through theological reflection. Especially there is this one site where a lot of young ex-evangelicals regularly share their deconstructive testimonies and receive theological affirmations from peers across the globe. So there are a lot of cases, like I can go on and on and on when it becomes with cases, but these acts of digital engagement, I think it's not trivial, but from educational psychological standpoint, they mark significant moments in developing identity, agency, and I think moral reasoning. The famous Erik Erikson, he theorized in his model of psychosocial development that adolescence and emerging adulthood are critical periods for identity formation, where individuals seek meaning, autonomy, and roles within broader communities. And I think expanding on this, educational psychologist Howard Sercombe, he argues that digital participation contributes positively to young people's development because it offers accessible avenues for public voice and relational identity and collective belonging. Another scholar says that she's a scholar of color and urban education. She also highlights that digital and community-centered storytelling empowers marginalized youth to engage in meaning-making, social critique, and civic agency through literacy that affirm their lived experiences and foster a sense of belonging. So online religious experiences, I think it's not just a mere passive or compensatory thing, but deeply formative when embedded in authentic relational networks and guided by practices that encourage spiritual reflection and character growth. Another scholar found that certain forms of online engagement, particularly those that foster connection and belonging, can significantly also reduce feelings of loneliness among adolescents. So it has a lot of pros, but of course, we can't deny the depth and danger of flattening human presence in digital faith. And the digital space can become pulpit, but yet I think it can also become a platform for harm. And Angela Gurel draws on to Charles Taylor's critique of modernity's flattening of moral space to describe how digital media environments can diminish the depth of human presence and moral imaginations in faith expression. So digital culture, with its emphasis on immediacy, visibility, and algorithmic favor, often reduces human presence to content. And this flattening manifests in two ways. First, by diminishing how others are perceived, which is a form of impoverished seeing. And then second, by commodifying relationships. Like everything is about like, I'll like you if you like me, I'll follow you if you follow me, or things like that. everything can become a consumption instead of collaboration. It can be a form of impoverished relating. And also, we all know that sometimes algorithms are bought. It can be very racist. Algorithm itself can be racist. Sophia Noble warns that search engines and social platforms replicate structural biases, particularly against women and communities of color. So no matter how hard the marginalized people move on to digital space and try to voice their voices, it can still be oppressed by the structure as platforms replicate structural biases. And in effect, the digital sanctuary risks becoming a curated echo chamber of what society is always already talking about, than a site of genuine ecclesial pluralism. So, and simultaneously, digital platforms are emerging as theological resistance and construction spaces among post-colonial Christian communities. Diasporic believers use podcasts, live stream liturgies, and hybrid digital gatherings to disrupt inherited colonial theologies and assert spiritual agency. So the challenge, I think, is to resist this simplistic binaries. Sorry, yeah, there's the colonial disruptions. And I think the challenge is to resist simplistic binaries. Digital is not merely good or bad, or just liberating or dangerous. I think it is both. And faith education must now include training in digital vocation, equipping young people to post and discern and curate content, not for a cloud, but for communion. And emerging adults from post-colonial contexts often appropriate online platforms to re-articulate Christianity outside Western ecclesial hierarchies and theological paradigms. So I think this reclamation disrupts colonial liturgical scripts and affirms embodied, localized, and ancestral modes of spirituality. So I think there still can be something done online. But one thing is that despite all of these positive examples, acknowledging the depth and danger, the faith-based digital content landscape in South Korea remains largely adult-driven. So while Christian digital content is widely produced and internet usage is among the highest globally here in South Korea, much of the material, such as youth devotionals or contents or sermons from leading youth pastors, are created by adults and targeted at youth audiences. So there are growing signs of some youth-generated contributions, but few platforms exist that truly empower young people to shape theological conversations on their own terms or lead digital content creation, but not many are like those. So I think this highlights a pressing need for pedagogies and ecclesial strategies that center youth voices not merely as passive recipients or consumers, but as theological agents. And within the framework of digital belonging, I believe that educators and church leaders must invest in spiritual practices and institutional support that equip young people to contribute meaningfully and authentically to the digital faith landscape. Without such intentional formation, the promise of digital sanctuaries risk being co-opted by adult-centered agendas that limit youth agency and silence innovation. So digital faith spaces, I believe, are no longer optional supplements to religious life, but I think they are formative arenas where emerging adults explore theological agency, build spiritual identity, and cultivate belonging. So if nurtured intentionally through digital discernment and theological reflection practices, these spaces can become vital extensions of the church, places where young people do not merely consume faith, content, but co-author it. And then think digital sanctuaries can be reclaimed not as a place of escape, but as a site of formation, justice, and faithful presence. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. That did just shift my lens. Thank you. As we take in what I would call the shift that Eser just offered us, I invite you to take a breath. Interesting, interesting. As we move from sanctuaries to gadgets, let me introduce Dr. Leo Epafras. Epafras. I didn't check that before we all met either.
Yes, Epafras.
Epafras.
That's
Thank
the
you.
biblical name.
Okay. Dr. Leo Epafras is a faculty member, researcher, training instructor, and partnership officer at the Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies at Universitas Gadjah Mada Graduate School in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. He is the recipient of several awards and scholarships, including a Fulbright and the Luce Foundation and the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies, Sadra Institute, and so forth. He teaches the history of religions, religious studies, the advanced study of Christianity, Judaism, English for theology, intercultural approaches to peace studies, and theology of hospitality. Dr. Epafras is an experienced training instructor focusing on religion and the internet, digital culture, youth and religion, enhancement of a lecturer's capacity, and other topics. His research topics include religion online, religion and popular culture, Jews of Indonesia, youth studies, and interreligious studies. And with all that, Leo, show us some gadgets, my friend.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Yeah, I truly blessed with Eser's presentation, and it seems that we are having overlapping concern, and hopefully we can engage beyond this meeting, and hopefully we can think about joint research or joint publication later on, because I truly deal with your own presentation and paper. And also I found that your presentation is much thoughtful than mine. Mine is much more practical, but hopefully we can truly learn and understand something from my presentation. Let me share my screen. Okay. And yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today. So it is truly a pleasure for me to join in this very fine program. And my name is Leonard Chrysostomos Epafras. Just call me Leo, much easier for you to call me. Yeah, this is my presentation entitled Gadgets Need Healing, a proposal for digital pedagogy. It's much more less theoretical, more on sharing experience as an educator. So also my disclaimer, my presentation in my paper is not from the perspective of education scientist, but is coming from my experience for 20 years as educators. and my empirical research on religion online and my research among the youth. Okay, I studied with the 5th century before Common Era in ancient Greece, where philosophers have distinguished logos, the reason, from mythos, the narratives. Mythos explain the movements of the universe through personalization of forces, minister the universe, and naming them gods and goddesses, and so on. And then ancient gods like Uranus explain the sky, Gaia manifestation of the earth, their children Kronos representing time, and the Olympian gods as new powers controlling thunder, such as Zeus, the ocean Poseidon, warfare Ares, beauty Aphrodite, and others. And the mouths of genius such as Hesiod and Homer's narrated these gods. But indeed, such worldview remain potent among Indonesian and among Indonesian indigenous communities, because part of my research is digital inclusion among indigenous religious communities. But however, what occurred not only a separation of logos and mythos, but also logos and techne. Techne was associated with skill and considered lower in quality than logos. And in the times of Hesiod and Homer, logos and techne were intertwined. So there was a god of craftsmen, Epafras, and for people of that time, knowledge was practical and practices strengthened knowledge. But according to the French philosopher Bernard Stiegler, due to the separation between logos and techne, or technology, as a manifestation of techne, it becomes alienated in the process of self-human formation. Techne was sidelined from human autonomy. For him, techne is not outside humanities, but a part of the formation of human self. I will explain it later. And also stated by Eser that yet concurrently techne in the form of technology that has grown incredibly fast is also pharmakon, both a remedy and a poison. Technology advances humanity, but also destroys it. Technology, especially media, through capitalism, kills the community's capacity to become mature and adult by replacing social and relational functions. But the attitude of alienating technology, the manifestation of techne, especially digital technology, directly or indirectly also adopted by theologians, philosophers, and those who view technology as dangerous to humanity. It is often heard and read the expression to keep a distance from digital technology if one wishes to preserve the dignity of humanity. Both dichotomizations have profound effects and have led to the instrumentalization of technology, reducing it to a mere tool. In contemporary times, the exponential rise of digital technology, particularly artificial intelligence, AI, has reignited primordial fears of human creations becoming, quote, like one of us, end quote. Genesis 3, chapter 22. These fears underscore humanity's struggles to integrate technology into its existential framework. But one foundational and powerful biblical narrative is the Sinai episode in the book of Exodus, which recounts the encounter between Moses and God. Through Moses, God granted the Torah to the Israelites, and the intricate details are presented in the 15 chapters alone. But one tiny piece of information is intriguing. In the chapter 31, verse 18, God, quote, gave him, Moses, the 2 tablets of the covenant law, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. In Hebrew, Etzba Elohim. Tablets, fingers. So are we witnessing the first gadget in the world? Are we dealing with Deus digitalis? After all, digital in Latin means finger. The biblical finger of God signifies creativity, authority, power, capability, and even the manifestation of the Holy Spirit, as noted in Deuteronomy, Psalms, Jeremiah, the Gospel of Luke, and other texts. But beyond anthropomorphic imagery, this activity unveils a profound connection between the self and technology. The Exodus moment illustrates how technology, writing through fingers, embodies God's thoughts, ideas, aspiration, and vision for his people, channeled in the technological outcome, the Torah tablets and the Torah discourse. Thus, technology is not an external aspect of the self, but essential to selfhood. Philosophers from Thales to Whitehead have explored panpsychism, the idea that non-human objects possess an inner life. This concept, echoed in texts like Psalm 19, where nature declares God's glory, suggests humans are part of a larger interconnected consciousness. In the digital realm, this manifests as the ELIZA effect, where we attribute human-like intelligence to computers. But Colin Kaufman identifies a new informational person, where digital data actively shapes our identity. Building on these thinkers like I mentioned earlier, Bernard Stiegler argued that technology or techne is integral to human identity. While Reid Hoffman, as I mentioned here in the slide, called this evolution a new humanity, Homo techne. We now exist within a network of human and non-human actants, as Bruno Latour terms them, creating a distributed and non-linear presence. In far more immersive, profound, and interconnected states, we currently reside in a world where embodiment and disembodiment move in synchronous oscillation. This condition is most dramatic in the metaverse online games of the massively multiplayer online or MMO genre, Pokemon Go, and augmented reality educational services. In that case, they form a new technique and new psychological condition that I call in Japanese, Japanese is people from Java Island, one of the Indonesian island, manunggaling kawulo lan mayantara. A citation from the expression of Japanese mysticism is manunggaling kawulo lan gusti, which is the ultimate goal of a spiritual journey towards the unity of mind, feeling, and action within a divine framework. An unio mystica, if you are familiar with mysticism discourse. The immersive and digital virtuality experience leads to what I call manunggaling kawulo lan mayantara, the deepening of humanity's union with technology. Of course, this can be debated and must be debated. By the way, this is a Japanese depiction of Punokawan, this part, a Japanese invented companions of Gatotkaca and Abimanyu. And on the right side is digital Batara or Deva. Ultimately, the challenge of digital technology is the shift in our understanding of temporality. The distinction between chronos, sequential quantitative time, and kairos, opportune qualitative time or momentum, has become fluid and overlapped. In a chronos mindset, we use technology for efficiency. In a kairos mindset, we employ it to mobilize ourselves toward meaningful purpose or telos. The excellent task of our time is to navigate this collapsed temporality, synchronizing our activities toward meaningful destination. Considering this, we should view digital technology as an ecosystem, which I term as digital ecosystem. Ecosystem with humanity as the nodes of a larger interconnected and network system. So you can see in digital ecosystem, humanity is no more a center, in the center stage. However, a homeostatic condition is required to maintain equilibrium between the employment of digital technology and non-technological engagement. The equilibrium between high-tech and high-touch. This lays the groundwork for establishing digital pedagogy. It focuses more on the mindset than on the tool set, as explained earlier. Just as natural ecosystem encompasses biotic and abiotic factors, the digital ecosystem regards humanity as one of many agency, which may include laptops, gadgets, LCD projector, application, and numerous other actants in the Latourian realm. Through this networking framework, we unlock the potential for a continuum between chronos and kairos, fostering face-to-face engagements and interactive interfaces. Oxford Insight released its annual reports on the Government AI Readiness Index in December 2024. The report's core focused on three scoring aspects: whether certain governments maintain a strategic vision for AI development and governance through regulation and ethical risk management. Secondly, the availability of AI tools in the technology sector. And the third, the extent of data availability and infrastructure. In the Asia-Pacific region, such as excluding Singapore and Australia from the top 10, the other member countries have a readiness score between 58.6 or under that, significantly lower than the two, Singapore and Australia. This indicates that many have not embraced AI revolution, especially in Indonesian context. We are very left behind. We rely solely on the limited assistance provided by our government. Therefore, we may experience what I call technological involution. This refers to a process in which technological development focuses inward, emphasizing refinement, efficiency, or complexity within existing systems, rather than fostering breakthrough or external expansion. We utilize and optimize the existing infrastructure. Now I move to digital pedagogy. Generally, three models serve as the building blocks of digital pedagogy: heutagogy, pedagogy, and cybergogy. Heutagogy emphasizes self-determined learning, granting learners full control over their educational journeys, including what they learn and how they learn. It underscores autonomy, self-reflection, and the ability to customize learning to meet personal needs and context. Pedagogy or paragogy is a learning theory and practice emphasizing peer-to-peer learning and collaboration. It focuses on how groups can collaborate to co-create knowledge, share insights, and learn from one another without relying solely on traditional teachers-centered approaches. Cybergogy is a learning framework that focuses on effectively teaching and learning in virtual and digital environments, such as online platforms, virtual worlds, and digital classrooms. It was developed to address the unique challenges and opportunities of learning in cyberspace, where technology mediates interaction between learners and educators. That's a normative understanding of the triad. Now, however, the triad above require contextualization. And I think in this part, I'm having overlapping concern with Eser. Not by starting with pedagogical system, but by examining the Gen Z subculture, as it represents the largest population in higher education institution, particularly within the digital subculture. Although it is not comprehensive, I have gathered some insights to help us to determine the types of adaptation we can propose. I named the Gen Z baby Zoomers as a contrast from my generation, as I belong to baby boomers. Baby Zoomers because they mostly evolve within the Zoom meetings and during the pandemic, with the Zoom interaction. In this regard, I want to emphasize one of the most popular hashtags in TikTok is POV, point of view, with billions of users. POV is also very important to understand baby Zoomers or Gen Z positions and aspiration to make digital pedagogy meaningful. Baby Zoomers thinks and acts associative, just like rhizome. Rhizomes are like grass, ginger, or tulip plants whose roots spread, creep, and intertwine with other entities. They are always seeking and creating relationship. Rhizome forming new association, re-association with old entities, and even disassociation with certain entities when necessary. Many of them is undergone disconnected becoming. They do connect hierarchically in schools, church, family, but also forging heterarchy, which it owns connectivity beyond traditional hierarchy. The conjunctive attitudes among youths refer to a mindset or behavioral tendency where young people more than seek connection and integration, they often preferring collaboration, inclusivity, and synthesis of diverse ideas, perspective, and context. It emphasizes building bridges rather than creating divisions, and it reflects their preference for association, networking, and collective engagement. And unlike deductive and inductive, abductive reasoning is a form, I found this prominent among the youth. Adaptive reasoning is a form of logical inference that begins with an observation or set of observation and seeks the simplest and most likely explanation for those observations. It is often described as, quote, inference to the best explanation, end quotes. This is the scheme. Gen Z or baby Zoomers exhibit hierarchical characteristics rather than hierarchical ones, aligning with various alternative authorities instead of adhering to a single chain of command. Social media has expanded authority beyond traditional structure, not necessarily negating existing authority, but demanding change. We inherited a hierarchical classroom arrangement that places the teacher at the center of the learning flow. She or he is positioned at the front while the students sit neatly before her or him, arranged from front to back. The back seats become the farthest away, often serving as spaces for uninterested subjects and semi-illegal activities beyond the teacher's surveillance. The front area is performance states, and the students become spectators, often passively. So this is the arboreal scheme. So against those backdrops and to create a digital pedagogical ecosystem, I propose integrating another triad. Logomatia, the substance of course, praxamatia, the practical and performative aspect, and patomatia or patamatia, the affective dimension. This may serve as an alternative terms for the three learning domains, namely cognitive, affective, and psychomotor in Bloom's taxonomy. However, I emphasize the matia aspect, highlighting mutual learning between teachers and students. I will start with logomatia, the substance of learning. The term logomatia is derived from the two Greek roots, logos, the word, speech, reason, discourse, and logic. We discussed it earlier. Meanwhile, matia means to learn or to study. It emphasizes a course's intellectual and conceptual foundation. And in a digital environment, this dimension involves curating rigorous yet accessible content, and digital tools such as learning management system, video lectures, e-books, and e-material facilitate the dissemination of knowledge while accommodating diverse learning styles. Of course, social media activism is also endorsed, such as provided trivia of the class insights shared in the social media platform. Logomatia might also introduce and employ a customized AI genie, such as created through the PO AI service. Second one, praxamatia becomes a focal point where knowledge, praxis, and the creation of vibrant classrooms converge. The urgency intensifies as baby Zoomers tends to be more associative and conjunctive, as I mentioned earlier, in knowledge acquisition. Therefore, praxis is crucial for effective learning. At this juncture, the dichotomy of logos and technique is being addressed through sessions such as Gadgets Need Healing, and the introductory session on the selective visual attention and zoom lens phenomenon, and the My Classroom session, which facilitates out of classroom engagement through digital services such as the employment of Canva, Mentimeter, and quizzes. It also endorses co-designing aspects in which students actively participate in the learning process, for example, by designing mini research projects and endorsing co-designing class activity. The last one, patomatia, the affective dimension. Patomatia derived from pathos, addresses the emotional and relational aspect of learning. The fundamental concept is that creating a relevant classroom involves activating the docent hormone, which acts as a mood booster by activating dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Notably, docent in Indonesian means lecturer. This approach includes gamification, the institution of guardian angels, collective singing during the intercession, and social media activism. Okay, that's basically my explanation. Now I'm showing you a little bit what's so-called the making of relevant classroom. Know of your shinobi, Ronin, and Nakama. I call my students shinobi. It's from the Naruto's. If I don't know whether you're aware of this manga and anime, Japanese anime. Shinobi is basically samurai, so I call them shinobi. And Ronin is for the auditing students, and Nakama is my lecturer colleague. So I'm starting most of my classroom with the classroom survey in order to understand them. This is the example of that. So, for example, this is the theology of hospitality classroom. So I provided this Google form asking several questions about their aspiration, their hobby, and so on and so forth. What churches they came from, what areas they came from, and so on. And it's transformed into Google Sheet, this one. And then I mapping in using Google My Maps, all provided by Google. I'm sorry, sounds like a Google marketing person. But anyway, this is very useful for me for my classroom. So, for example, I can understand more about my student. You can see my student, one of my students coming from the northernmost of areas, very remote areas, very marginal areas, much closer to the Philippines rather than to the central government in Java Island. So this is the name is Bola Shea. She's women, and this is the photograph, and so on and so forth. So I can understand their situation, her situation, and her aspiration, and so on and so forth. So you can see it's helped me to understand my shinobi. And I'm always starting with the class theme that's engaging class theme. For example, in my religious studies course in Gadjah Mada University, not allowing, but I'm opening the classroom as a space for them to chasing any question, any difficult question, chasing your why. The theme is entitled Chase Preso, chasing your why. This is the example of Instagram posting. And also, for example, in my classroom, my course on advanced study of Hebrew, we study Book of Ruth. Then this is not so fun in English, but in Indonesian it's very, very fun. Ruth gadis kampung sebelah, pansos jadi nyai. But in English is the girl, Ruth, the girl next village went fire cloud chasing, becoming an uptown woman. Something like that. So make a engaging classroom. This is the class material for public education and out of classroom engagement. So I produce a lot of Instagram and TikTok contents that in fact is part of the spilling, part of the discussion of the classroom. So the student has to comment and say something about that. And in the session of our meeting, we discuss of the certain issue. For example, in the theology of hospitality, we have this discussion about empathy and erasure. When something happened with women, especially in regards of the public figure, male public figure, usually the female is being set aside by the public. It's called sympathy and erasure. Also about cafe sospesio or kopi tunda in Indonesian, in Napoli, and so on and so forth. So something like this. And also because I have to produce publication, and the publication also spilled in Instagram and let the students also reading and also public at large to aware of this discussion, and then we have a more lively discussion. My city, my classroom. So allow more engaging outside the walled classroom. This is in our university park, and you can expand it to market and other places as well. So, and it's always with singing together. So we sing together as well. And yeah, and of course, social media is part of our engagement as well. I also endorse students to say something about our class in social media and celebrate diversity. So this culture session, because in Yogyakarta, every Thursday, it's called in Japanese calendar Kamis Pon, Thursday Pon. Pon is a Japanese calendar. We endorse to wearing cultural outfit, and this is one of the example because my classroom, this religious studies classroom, oh sorry, this is advanced study of Christianity classroom, in which all the students are Muslims, and we discuss about Christianity, and then we have cultural outfit. This is me, and so on, yeah, something like that. So you can see this. This is the example of final exam project. So I endorse many in my classroom to have project or mini project, and this one of the example of a final project. So the students created wayang, and speaking about the land of diversity, I give you a glimpse of that. This is the wayang. And another final project is personal experience, story of mixed religious marriage upbringing. So the student is coming, the student is Catholic, but coming from the Muslim family. She shared after the class discussion. This is the religious studies classroom. After the class, she shared her experience as coming from the mixed religious marriage upbringing. Yeah, something like that. So this is part of the final project of my, and also the guardian angel. In some of my classroom, not all classroom, especially the undergraduate classroom, I assign each of them. They can choose their own friends to be a guardian angel. So, for example, if something happened with them, the guardian angel can share the issue with me, and yeah, they can share each other to help each other if something happened personally. Also, I created several AI Genie or AI bot. This is a study bot, and this is intercultural study bot for intercultural studies of for peace studies. This is the example. This is the AI bot, for example. So I allow the AI to fit. I fit the AI bot all the material of the classroom, and a student can use it for their own mini project or their own final project. This is an example. So create an interfaith project to restore mangrove in Silawan Village, Belu district, based on intercultural communication by Judith, and so on. So the AI helped the students to provide insights and so on. And there is this reference is referring to our book in our classroom. Okay, almost done. And then also there's an AI helping for mental health. This is provided by my friend, my colleagues who an AI developer. And we have collective book project in some classroom. We have collective, for example, we provide book project. And in this book consisted of painting, digitally painting, poems, essays, short stories, and many other things. And also we develop MOOC, Massive Open Online Courses. This is an example of Massive Open Online Courses. Here, one of my MOOC materials about religious literacy. Okay, the internet probably not good, so I just skip it. And then, thank you very much.
I love it when I have preconceptions kind of blown open in a session. This is just awesome, people. I want to start our engagement time, our conversation time, by asking Eser and Leo to surface any questions or comments that they have for each other.
Eser, do you want to say something to me? I have one. Please, Eser.
Yeah, sure. Go. Well, okay, since you asked me to go first. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I really liked how you showed what's happening in your class, and I was like, oh, what's that? I want to try that, but then everything went by so fast. But yeah, it was no. It was really good to actually see how like things were working in the field. The hand was like framing, the theological framing of the finger was really interesting. And what I found especially intriguing was also that gadgets themselves need rest. And I think that will work really well with youth groups too, because when I say, hey, turn in your phone, like you need less screen time, I think that will not work as well as your gadgets need rest. So that was also interesting, turn that you made there. I really love that. I wonder if I had a question, but I wrote it down, but I can't remember it anymore. But let me just find it real quick. Well, yeah. Anyway, I was wondering if you think that no, I'll ask my questions later. But yeah, that was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eser. Because I think your presentation is very thoughtful, and you quote Charles Taylor about flattening. What is the flattening? What is exactly flattening the space or something? I found, because most of the time I'm the empirical researcher. I do research on the ground and field. The challenge is not truly flattening. Please respond to me, Eser. Probably South Korea context, but Indonesian context is truly mixed context. Even though we are among the largest subscriber of social media services, but we are also traditional, as earlier from Mariska here, my colleague Mariska presentation, we are also at the same time very traditional society. So flattening is probably in certain contexts, but in larger part is very, very complicated and dynamics. So, but probably you can explore more, say something about that. What do you mean by flattening and so on in terms of your own research project?
Yeah, thank you for that question. What I mean by flattening is it diminished the depth of human presence, right? You just see the screen, you don't actually realize that there is a person behind it. So that's what I meant when I talked about when I brought in Charles Taylor's understanding of flattening. So it reduces the human presence just to a content.
Yeah, because in my research, I found that, there's a many traditional authority, religious traditional authority, who snap to the social media's services and become a what's so-called celebgram or pastorgram, pastor in Instagram. They recreating a more hierarchical, another version of hierarchical. It's not truly flattening, but I agree with your observation and insight from Charles Taylor on that issue. That's truly need to think again my own data. But it seems that in many of my publication, I argue that on the other hand, social media truly creating another hierarchy. Even I mentioned in my scheme heterarchical. Heterarchical means they, especially the Gen Z, the baby Zoomers, remain faithful to certain kind of authority, but they have more possibilities of authorities. So it's not truly flattening, but on the other hand, they can insert their own self into that kind of structure and become a mouthpiece of a certain influencer, for example. They can replicate the message from the influencer. So, and in that kind of issues, they can even more having their selfhood is developed, not necessarily in a good way, not necessarily because it depends on the message they carried out, but at least they found meaningful expression. That's why I truly love your own research, because it helped me to understand more about how the social media space or digital space is truly help them to positioning themselves, while in the offline world they are being silenced, they are being set aside, marginalized, and so on.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with that. Yes, flattening can happen, but also it can be dynamic, and there are a lot of glories that are in social media. I was wondering, do you see any tension between the sanctuary metaphor and your proposal that gadgets need healing, or do you see them as complementary? And can a space be both sacred and in need of healing? So that was the question that was going in my mind.
That's my basic argument why I started with the ancient Greece, when logos and techne is separated clearly, and I try to emerge. Not necessarily we cannot differentiate. We still can differentiate what so-called logos as manifestation of ideas, thinking, and so on, and techne as technical issues or technology and so on. But my argument is always that digital issue is always in ecosystem. We not rely on digital. We're not speaking about how advanced you are using YouTube, you are using AI and so on, but how AI is part of the larger complexity of human affairs. So tension is always there, always there. And I cannot claim that my gadgets need healing session is successful. is only one initiative, is one way to make it more fluid rather than technology and selfhood. Through the Exodus story, I'm trying to say even God using technology. And if we go to I'm sorry, I'm presuming my starting point is Christian tradition. I'm truly sorry that I say that's assuming that you are Christians. But from my Christian tradition, from my Christian Bible, there's a story of Genesis the third, when humans fail to understand God's message and eating the forbidden fruit. God rectified their dignity through technology, through rope. And even in Hebrew, tekenot is using the noble rope, not only just protecting you from cold and hot heat and so on, but truly rectify their dignity through technology. So this kind of dynamics, I want to keep it that way. Creative tension, especially when we're dealing with baby Zoomers.
The rest of us are loving this. But at the same time, I'm going to interrupt and invite both Jennifer and Mary have posed questions. I'm going to ask them to articulate them aloud if they would. Jennifer, I'll have you go first. And you can also include your love, Charles Taylor.
Oh, thank you. Well, first I love that Leo, you said Pastorgram, because this is something that I feel like I'm seeing a lot on social media. And I sometimes wonder, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, as I imagine most of us do. And I wonder about the ways that social media is a space where if you have a pastor who is already maybe inclined to have an outsized ego, meaning perhaps became a pastor because they like that they get to get up in a pulpit and preach every Sunday. Um, and I mean that I mean that in the worst kind of way, not the good kind of way. Hear me, please.
Yeah, yeah.
If then having this platform of Instagram makes it even more tempting to kind of be like, here's me and my life, while at the same time, can a place like Instagram also function in a good way to kind of draw attention to your faith community and say, here's what we have to offer to folks, inviting to things. Anyway, so I've kind of two questions. What do you sort of think about that tension between the stroking of the ego that happens on something like Instagram and then also the potential for bringing together community? And then I also just commented, I love Charles Taylor. And so my question for the both of you in this is, I know Eser's paper in particular references Charles Taylor, but I think what he is getting at in kind of the scope of his work is relevant to both arguments too. In Cosmic Connections, which is kind of a continuation of A Secular Age, he talks also about like going off of this flattening of our world. He also talks about how it seems that we've all lost a sense of enchantment. We're so technologically minded. It put me in mind of Erica Galt's presentation. I believe it was Erica Galt's presentation this week that talked about how optimization is not meant to be confused with divinity. Like it maybe isn't a divine call, so to speak, to become optimized. And so how does kind of our digital optimization threaten our ability to be more enchanted with our world. And he specifically is talking about kind of belief in things other than the very, very tangible and logical. So anyway, I pose those two things as questions for thought, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah. Eser, allow me to respond first, because it seems the question also implied to my presentation. So thank you very much, Jennifer. Before I respond, I need to share my thought to all of you. That's many issues I cannot respond properly, to address properly. This is too complex. Yeah, not to forget, the first digital technology become more public. They are using what's so-called WWW, World Wide Web. It is the world issue. It is wide, and it is web. It's networking. So my response is very limited. It's especially coming from my own experience and my own research, especially the youth. Some of the question I cannot respond properly, Jennifer, because my research mostly on the youth agency. I'm starting with questioning them and understanding their position, how they strategize themselves in this very much imposing digital laden world. So yes, there's a lot of issues and a lot of research saying that's how negative. If you can sense my presentation, if you also have a chance to read my paper, that's the way I want to go away from. Not saying all the research is bad. No, I'm not trying to fight to say this, oh, we need technology. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying technology is with us. It's part of our humanity, like or dislike, bad and good, and so on. I think Eser also emphasized that in her presentation. So yes, we have a lot of things, bad things about pastogram and so on. But I also want to underline, and I found one or two at least, and I interviewed the person. The influencer is truly helping people. This is not a big one. His followers just some numbers, thousands of followers, but he and his services is truly helping young people. I interview him, not only checking his posting. So I'm terribly sorry, probably I cannot respond properly to that. And secondly, I'm not a Taylorian, so I cannot respond properly, but I think you can understand my position and about optimizing and so on. Well, I can debate. My undergraduate is computer science, and I work for the IT company for 13 years. So yes and no. We have to compare with whether book is truly having a good influence to us or not. It depends on the substance of the book. The performing part in the bookstore, how they put the books, certain book to be a bestseller and so on. Of course, we are in that kind of algorithm mentality. But anyway, a good book lovers can find their own way to find a good book, something like that. That's probably not a good metaphors, but anyway, that's my limited response. But anyway, thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I totally understand what you mean by digital optimization. And yes, it does risk optimization. Yeah, it risks suffocating enchantment. It makes like spaces, of course, less open to divine interruption and more subject to like strategic planning, likes and all that. And I think he says like we lose our cosmic tension. But I also think that emerging adults sometimes resist this optimization by creating spaces of vulnerability, lament, or silence. And I think these are like fragile acts of re-enchantment. yeah, like within an imminent commodified system like social media, people still like reach for connection, and then meaning, and then also sacred expressions. So I think this can be examples of push against secular constraints and digital optimization. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you both for your commitment to listening to young people and acknowledging that they have agency in these spaces. I get so frustrated with some of the popular ways in which we are talking about young people. So just thank you for that. There's a lot of research in the US right now that doesn't get trumpeted, that's empirical research with young people about the ways in which they make meaning in these varieties of ways. And I loved, Eser, your note just now about fragile reenchantment. That's a great phrase. I'm gonna keep that in mind. And Leo, I love the baby Zoomers notion. Like I love that label. But here's my question for Leo. You early in your presentation talked about the collapse of temporality. I think that's really important. I love that. And I've been talking a lot in my own work about context collapse. And I think maybe the collapse of temporality is a particular element of that. Can you say a little bit more? Because that was just really evocative.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mary. That's an evolved ideas. I am not coming yet to the term, but you know, chronos, kairos. Again, I have to stand my position as a Christian. So this is most of my understanding is coming from my upbringing and my engagement with Christianity. So chronos, this issue is like this. I'm very much influenced by whether are you aware of that Abraham Joshua Heschel. His books are The Prophets and the Pathos God, the pathos of God, something like that. So our God is very pathetic, is truly sharing emotionally to the world and so on. And in that point of engagement, we have Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is, yeah, you know, everything. So my point, I try to, probably not truly successful, but I try to say that the point is not using our cell phone, using any technology. We are, in fact, in the technological laden world. But how we understand temporality, we can use technology and being influenced by that and being degraded our humanity by that. But at the same time, we can use technology if we understand kairos, moments, interaction, in which time is flexible and so on. I'm truly influenced by the moment when Jesus speaking to the bandits on the right or left side that's saying, in this hour, you are with me in the paradise. That kind of understanding truly influenced me very much. So the issue is not the, the tools itself, but how we framing the technology, whether we use it for kairos. For example, this is a kairos. We meet each other over the difference of times and places and so on. This is the kairos moment. But on the other hand, the outside non-technological, non-digital world, we can see and saw as well how people can conquer other people, not using technology at all, not using digital technology at all, because they simply set aside the kairos moment. And we understand we are in educational business. Education is the most vulnerable place when power relation is endorsed, regardless digital technology there in a place or not. So that's I try to recover the basic ideas of temporality. The issue is no more, not only, of course, this is also part of our life. And you know, Marshall McLuhan speaking about the medium is the message, and that can be terrible. But at the same time, it's also potential for us to overcoming the issue. So, yeah, let me think about that again, but please, we work together on these issues together, Chronos and Kairos idea.
Well, I love that. And I can't imagine how much fun it is. I love the Rel of Fun classroom. That's wonderful. Anyway, thank you to both of you.
Other thoughts, questions? We have a couple more minutes we could take here. Not seeing any hands. So maybe I'd ask our two speakers if there's any last words you want to take before we close the session.
Eser, please.
Well, it was really interesting to talk about this. I've learned a lot. I think this also opened up a lot of like prophetic critiques and interesting things about digital space. I wonder if digital spaces is spiritually wounded and in need in redemption, or can it just be sanctuaries? Does it always have to have both? Like a lot of thoughts on here, but thank you all for coming. It was interesting to talk to all of you together. And Dr. Leonard, thank you for your presentation. And thank you, Eileen, for leading us.
Yeah, same message. Just like Eser, thank you very much for your interest, and thank you, Eileen, for presiding us together. And I truly hope any of you we can engage more than beyond this session, and we can work together and we can learn together, and probably we have a research project together across continent, cross places, and especially Eser, please share your email. Especially, I'm not saying everybody can share your email, but especially Eser, because I have a chance to see your paper. Hopefully we can have a project together, Korean, South Korean, and Indonesian context in terms of youth studies. Thank you very much all. Thank you.
So thank you all very much for attending. I would point out that we have, I'm not sure how many of us are members of communities of practice. There are 4. That's the gathering at 9. But please join us for a plenary at 11. 11 Eastern time. So an hour and 2.5 hours from now. My co-host Annie and a gentleman, a lobbyist named Dennis Heafy, are going to talk about technology and different abilities. Dennis is quadriplegic and relies heavily on technology, his wheelchair, and yet he still manages to go to Washington and yell at Congress to make things better for the people like him. Anyway, thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of hours.